so that the people who are following the conversation online, who are actually a good number, can be able to hear the voice of the person speaking very clear. So we will have better the public address system, but because we don't have a distance conversation, both online and offline. It's required that we have this special microphone as recommended by our media house. So welcome to the Digital Rights and Inclusion Forum by Paradigm Initiative 2021. This is an annual event which Paradigm Initiative organizes every year. So we had this event happening in April in more than 12 countries in Africa. Here in Nairobi, but because of the COVID-19 protocols, and specifically the ban on entry and exit into Nairobi and four counties, we couldn't organize this event here at the Secretary Hotel, so we had to reschedule it to live. So welcome to this Digital Rights and Forum. We are represented by a group of diverse group of stakeholders. So we have policymakers who are part of this conversation. We have activists or active citizens. We have digital rights stakeholders from civic, from internet, from Thompson Reuters Foundation. We have Amnesty International, Paradigm Initiative, and we have University of Nairobi, and many others. So I want to welcome all of you to this event, and we are thinking of just now. So I'll begin with the round of introductions, beginning with Liam, and the plan is that we sanitize microphone for you.
It's working now.
So that's a lot. We have more participants coming. We should be expecting one response a year. Okay, and of course, number of something Nairobi is very of course so I'm going to speak for 15 minutes or less on the topic which has brought us here today and which is very critical and dear to our hearts. As digital rights stakeholders, as Kenyans, as East Africans, and as people of the world that Obama would have. So the topic we're discussing today is on digital rights. On one hand, vis-a-vis chaotic elections in Eastern Africa. And I'm going to begin by giving you a narration of how internet currently defines our rights. I think even by the nature of the organization of this particular forum is happening physically at secret hotel, and it's also happening in an online platform. That happens before you. Malindi, Mombasa, in Nigeria, across the world, people follow the forum because of something called the internet. So the internet has made the world a global village. That is a common sense here, out there. You can chat with somebody in the United States of America, or somebody in Australia, or somebody in any corner of the planet Earth in real time because of the possibilities granted to us humans by the internet. So there have been advancements in technology, and there is what has been referred to as an internet revolution. The Internet of Things is taking over the world. You go to a restaurant in Japan, place your order online, you're served by a robot, go home. Internet and technology is defining our world today. In fact, some human rights activists have argued that in addition to food and water, internet ought to be classified as a basic human right and a basic need for that matter.
Recording in progress.
Whether they are right or wrong, I think the jury is still out there. But I think I agree with them that the internet has attained the status of a basic human need. There was a time, I think it was 2 months or 3 months ago, in our organization, Judicial, which is headquartered in Nigeria, but with offices across Africa. So there was a problem with Google worldwide. I think all of you must have been affected at some point. So there was an internet problem with Google. I think there are some issues. And personally, as a client, I was stuck. I couldn't even accept my contacts without accepting Google contacts. That is how important the internet has become in our lives as Kenyans and as Africans. And looking at elections, internet has become a key component of our elections in the world beginning 2004. So what is an internet shutdown? So an internet shutdown happens when internet service providers like Safaricom, Telcom, Namely, and others have been told don't allow people to be online. Don't provide the internet service as the name suggests. So manipulation of the internet, which ranges from reducing internet speeds, or in some cases, shutting down the internet entirely, as it happened in some countries, as I'm going to show. So internet shutdown, internet blackout, that is one thing. If you look at Africa, and specifically the Eastern African context, internet shutdowns have become kind of a common thread in all our elections. And I will take you down the road. Let's go to Tanzania. So in Tanzania, when they had the election in 2020, with Magufuli, the late president, and Tundu Lissu, the main opposition leader at that time, we had an internet shutdown in Tanzania days before the election. On the election day, and also after the election. And in Tanzania, there is a body called the TCRA, the Tanzania Communications Regulatory Authority. So TCRA ordered telecom companies in Tanzania, Airtel, Tigo, Vodacom, and many others, ordered them to suspend bulk SMS before the elections. So you couldn't send an SMS to more than 2 people, more than 1 person. Bulk SMS were banned in that particular part of the world. And in addition to that, bulk voice conversations were also banned. So you couldn't organize a conference call, like a calling Christian, I link it up with Joseph, and link it up with, then we have a conference call to discuss about the election. You couldn't do that because the TCRA, the regulatory body in Tanzania, suspended or at least ordered the telecom companies to suspend bulk SMS and bulk voice calls. In Tanzania as well, during the election and before the election, you couldn't send a text message with the word Chadema, Chama cha Demokrasia na Maendeleo or something. So you couldn't send an SMS with the word Chadema because the government thought, or maybe people are mobilizing to the internet and sending messages and saying, oh, let's vote for our political party, which is Chadema. You also couldn't send an SMS with the word Tundu Lissu, and that was the main political challenger of the late president, John Pombe Magufuli. So you send an SMS to your friend, a normal SMS, mounted back, been blocked by TCRA and the telco providers. WhatsApp and Twitter was particularly targeted. And as a protocol officer, I actually monitored that particular. And at some point, we had a blackout in Tanzania, which is and I had to coordinate with the human rights organizations in Tanzania as far as an initiative to share VPNs, which enable people to access the internet and communicate with the rest of the world. So WhatsApp is a very common platform. In fact, I dare say all of you here. I haven't checked your phones, but I know all of you are on WhatsApp. By the look on your phones, you must be on WhatsApp. So WhatsApp and Twitter were specifically targeted in Tanzania because they are common platforms for exchanging information. So the government at some point apparently used the internet now to weaken the opposition and trying to ask them to, or to destroy their efforts to reach out to their people and their networks and mobilize all those things. In fact, I remember here in Kenya at some point when we had NASA and Jubilee at that time when politics in Kenya was happening in 2017. I remember opposition leader at that time, that of Kenya, saying that they have set up, I think, kind of a center somewhere in restaurants where they're going to receive all the forms the agents are going to send from across the country, and kind of tagging them together with the IDC. And I remember saying that what they are some, what you have, of course, as characteristic of Kenyan election. So let's go across the border in Uganda. One of the most chaotic elections I have ever witnessed in my life happened in Uganda on January 14, 2021. Complete with an opposition member of parliament and opposition leader campaigning on a bulletproof vest. As elected voters keep chaotic elections. It happened in Uganda like crazy. So a letter was sent by the Uganda Communications Commission to all telecom and ISPs, internet service providers in Uganda, MTN, Airtel, Nembe, before the election, asking them to suspend the provision of the internet because of what President Museveni considered to be the spread of fake news and hate speech. And of course, government will always find a little loophole in the laws of the country to try to hide and sanitize, as now government sanitize their illegal actions. So in Uganda, the Uganda Communications Commission ordered a temporary suspension of the operation of the agency in the country, allegedly in exercise of its functions under sections 5.1 and 6 of the Uganda Communications Act of 2013. As I told you, they always find a way of sanitizing the Ugandans. So MTN, being non-profit banking companies, they complied because the penalty for non-compliance was being changed out of Uganda, which is a worse thing than shutting the internet as you've been ordered by the government. So on election day, Uganda was on a total blackout internet. In fact, Uganda said, right here, what is happening in their own country? I think Kenyans, they actually relied on the Kenyan media to get the news of what was happening in Jinja or some village somewhere. A big mess. We saw that the internet shut down, playing out again in the Ugandan election. And there was an apparent interference by the government with the independence of the voting process. And that went unrecorded. In fact, I remember a clip was circulated online of military officers, starting ballots in a ballot box somewhere in Uganda and filling them using military flags and the planning center, chaotic. And all that happened because there was no independent media to check that. And independent media begins with the citizens. And that involves checking photos of the inequalities. That was never witnessed in Uganda, and there was a lot of mess. There was actually what some others have referred to as information chaos. So you get this information. Once I have no idea what is happening on second of this hour, because the internet is shut down, I have no idea what is happening in South City. Rumors begin spreading right, left, and center, and you can't get anybody. It is the reality that happens when you are internet shut down. Information chaos, spread of fake news, rumors, all those things. Let's cross the border to Burundi. And this will convince you why discussions around digital rights and internet shutdown, are actually, very important and needed at this particular hour in our country. Because what happens in East Africa always has a way of finding, its way to other countries. What happens in Tanzania, in Uganda, in Burundi, if you have to collect the house, that must, to an extent, happen in the. So in Burundi, on election day, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, Yahoo were all inaccessible. Not partially accessible, inaccessible. You can't access it. You can't send anything. You don't know that. Even if you have, you have an agent, job assignment. And remember, this is happening at the peak of the pandemic, COVID-19. COVID-19 pandemic is really, and therefore most organizations and companies have encouraged their staff to work from home, and then you have an internet shutdown. So you can't even work from home, and so economic losses are experienced. So authorities in Burundi had access to social media networks. Facebook was specifically targeted because it is a very famous platform in Burundi. YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, which are less popular among Burundians, were accepted. So you could access TikTok and do all the videos and stuff. You could access Twitter because the statistics had indicated in Burundi that were less accessible while others were shut down were less popular among Burundians. Okay. However, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp were restricted. YouTube and Google were intermittently restricted. So on and off, on and off, on and off. You have YouTube and Google being intermittently interrupted. So if you go across the border in Ethiopia, now not in an election context, but in a war context, you had the war in the Tigray region in Ethiopia. And the war between the government against some militia or some private army in the Tigray region of Ethiopia, and the government of Ethiopia, which has shut down the internet 8 times in 2019 alone, according to the Human Rights Watch report. The first thing they did in response is shut down the internet. Even before you start, or even before you notify the army to be on alert mode, the first thing they did is shut down the internet in the street. And they also shut down electricity. As a result, the people couldn't check their phones. They couldn't have an idea what was happening next door. All that going to the reality that internet has become or plays a key role in our elections in East Africa. So with this particular development in the region, I think, and we think as far as I think, good to have this discussion, because Kenya is going to the polls next year. In one program, in one of the most chaotic elections in our country, 2022 at that time. So what can we do as citizens of this country? What can we do as active citizens? What can we do as human rights organizations? What can we do as the people of the world to ensure that the possibility of an internet shutdown in Kenya ahead of the election is multiplied by 0, and we don't witness what we've seen in Tanzania, in Uganda, in Burundi, and in Ethiopia, the war in the Tigray region. So this discussion will continue from that point with the panel discussion. And I will ask my friend Victor from Amnesty International, my former classmate, to come forward so we can have a discussion, and then we can open the discussion Okay, yeah, so this is our panel discussion. We are going to engage Lina Onyango, who works with the Thompson Workers Foundation here in Nairobi. And then we're going to engage Victor Dede, who works with Amnesty International on digital rights. So the networks as a legal officer. So if you have anything legal, ask of course, within the limits of the discussion, not anything legal, in the right sense. We have matters of okay, so we're moving on to our panel discussion, and we're going to engage Lina Onyango and Lina works with the Thompson Workers Foundation, Nairobi as a legal officer. and officer. And welcome, guys. So first of all, beginning with the Victor, so your comments on the Tanzania context, the Tanzania experience is very interesting. Uganda experience, the Burundi experience, the Ethiopian experience. What do you think is happening with the internet? Is it becoming, part of our elections, or you think this is just, something that is unique to those particular contexts, and we as Kenyans shouldn't be bothered at all?
Very much, as you mentioned, the process of going to the internet. The internet, of going to other world. And so when you do that, very, very, really points out a couple of seven of the last 2 years. Previously, never been. We can just go through that. This know that something is becoming and I think the thing that we know is that looking at the place where we are having and this look going forward means that the potential we have are more and
Okay, so Lynette, as a legal officer at Council of Workers Foundation, I think you must have had discussion with your own colleagues about the internet shutdown. You must have seen the Tanzania, Uganda, in Ethiopia, and specifically to this discussion, we're going to focus on the internet shutdown which happened in the context of the elections, and we're going forward with Burundi and Uganda. So as a student, we were at the University, and we used to go to the library, download the internet, download all the text materials. How important is the internet in the life of Kenyans? And number two, how is it important in the context of the election? And you're free to comment on the other things I spoke about in regards to the Tanzania, Uganda, and Burundi elections. But focus on how important is it to your life as legal officer at local British College? How do you think Kenyans take it? Is it the best data or is it just something I can do away with and Kenyans should worry about it?
all for during our the library and for physical and find this one, whereas now so many touch and in general information. And then I think one more thing that I should highlight is internet-based marketing. There's so many there's so many people who make such an impact, particularly nowadays, internet-based. And the whole bigger picture, just really when you shut it down, on the basis of connection, or other national, so actually affect all the other aspects, whether it's communication, so I think what should not get us take action, other discussions going forward, the human rights council, all of this. So on the basis of
Sure, that's what I meant for us, very comprehensive, very detailed question. So, Victor, so could you kindly paint for the audience and for Kenyans out there who are watching this proceedings, will you paint for us what exactly happens in the internet shutdown? Okay, so the Communication Authority of Kenya has written a letter to all the and others, asking them to shut down internet service provision to Kenya on 9th of July 2022. So what happens? Will you paint for us the behind the scenes? What happens in an internet shutdown? So what goes behind the scenes when there's an internet shutdown, especially in a country like Kenya, where we almost host all the big names, be it IBM or Google or Facebook or all their sub-Saharan Africa options are here in Nairobi. So will you paint for us that picture?
Qualitating how internet shutdown we have one where the full shutdown. Then there is a partial that's where you find platforms. So when we got an one of the ways we can understand is what speed to have to limit what we can do so that the talking also And so, again, those are the three main in terms of how they do up in the class, which normally most these are the guys that again we should be scared.
In the absence of and usually when that happens, right information, for example, the agenda the election act saying that makes election results and data so shut down the internet how the people what's the rumors? They say the sleep so they have information that they have the rumors. Part of the so in India, we estimate that they have elections down and we estimate that tax election as for the for 1 month, the country so much in terms of I also want to practice one of the points that about the different chapter. For example, they use so the topic for opposition conference was of course was linked so they did not have they did not once again, the context of election is trying to promote free, fair, credible election. Examine how to examine if one region, several regions, do not have equal access.
Thanks a lot, Victor, and for that very good response, and also giving us the comparative context of India election. And you can imagine, in Kenya, where elections are never won, they are always rigged, or so we are told. So when you are told that the internet space of results coming from opposition strongholds have been structural, have been reduced, that in a country like Kenya is a spark of violence. Because one misinformation, one fake news results in information chaos and Now, speaking of the economic, economic part of the argument of internet shutdowns, there is a statistic that says across sub-Saharan Africa, it was estimated that internet shutdowns resulted in a loss of $2.2 billion US in 2019 alone. That's around 220 billion in 2019 alone across sub-Saharan Africa. That is a lot of money. Because if you shut down the internet, for instance, anybody who has been earning money working online is rendered temporarily jobless. You can't hold a business meeting over a day you wanted to buy for some Arabs in Dubai or somewhere. So that affects the economy. So the internet shutdown impact politically, socially, and economically. And maybe it is even good to bring this in the context of a country that is battling COVID-19 pandemic. There is something called the M-Care or M-Health app, whereby you can, track your steps to ascertain whether you went to a crowded place or you went to a place which has, recorded a high number of COVID-19 cases. So you can even consult your doctor online because of that app. So with the internet shutdown, your healthcare is automatically impacted by that particular lack of access to the app or the online. So this is a real. So what options are available when there is an internet shutdown? I'll switch off the internet. So what options are available to Kenyan citizens? And look at this question. This question is to you as a digital rights campaigner, obviously, because you interact with these issues on a daily basis. So, what options exist when there is an internet shutdown in a country like Kenya? So, how can I access it? And there are ways, whether orthodox or unorthodox, through which I can access the internet, to bypass all those roadblocks, placed by government.
The most yeah, so so that website, so for the event and so the question becomes how do you how do you prepare early in terms of getting yourself how do you enroll the secure application and the other bits most of the topics. Yes, just to mention that during the Tanzanian election, as I mentioned before,
just mention that during the Tanzanian elections, as I mentioned before, as far as actually purchased the BGMs and we use them during the SARS and we also use them during the pandemic. So I sent quite a number of VPNs to a project associate who works with that in Tanzania, Sofita, and then we conduct human rights organizations like the human rights of and many others, and distributed this VPN specifically. And we targeted basically the at-risk parts of the population, who include journalists or human rights activists who are pointing out the disease by government, and we targeted bloggers, and we targeted all those other people whom we thought were at risk of surveillance by government. So, they are a little bit, they have some monetary value on them. They are not free, and this, of course, human rights organizations like Amnesty and Paradigm and safety and materials for citizens, especially in a context like an election, an internet shutdown, and election. So, what can we learn in it from the 3 elections that we are analyzing as Kenyans? Because as I mentioned, what happens in one substance always has a way of finding, its way to the other country. So, in my view, as a country, I expect an internet shutdown in this country 101% in August of 2020. That doesn't happen in Jordan. I mean, you were supporting the account, shutdown. So, what lessons have we learned from those particular scenarios? And what can we do as Kenyans to try to avoid an internet crisis? What can we do as citizens, as human rights organizations, and what lessons have we learned from that? Because it will be foolish of us as Kenyans and as human rights organizations just sit pretty, thinking and hoping and praying it will not happen, and then it happens, and our citizens are affected, and we haven't done anything as digital rights organizations. So what lessons have we learned, and what can we do as human rights?
Thank you so much. One of the biggest for my neighbor, happening that we need to protect by readiness and each of us has a way to live, whether it's with civil society, whether it's the government, themselves, whether it's journalists, we each have a role, and the right time for it yesterday. We have just 1 year to the general election. One of the key things analyzing the powers the choice terms of educating what to do on the internet. So we found that in some jurisdictions, for example, Eswatini was because of the protests that are going on to Post-Somalia, the national system, they trying to get etc. There was a directive by the government to shut down the internet. And the people who the main ISP, they shut down the internet. The matter is still debate, but why we be on the lookout if there is no legal way for issues such as if there is a legal way for state to the mandates, another thing I spoke about it before is that the very thing that the state is trying to do, they might be stopping the other one. So actually doing that shadow, one of these is so so one of the key benefits of this is to carefully cover one the power many more people for example, shutdown, carefully coming out when how what the parameters make shut down and when them against the fundamental human rights that we will make if there is no balance there, that's the big room for understanding for physical chaos.
What lessons can we draw from the three partners and what
I think the one so one of the things that we try to do is that really sure what but we talked about when the internet freedom of assembly issue. We have freedom, right to information, we have media freedoms. And you see, many people don't look at internet shutdowns as affecting these rights because we believe these rights actually exercised openly. Recently, we have had the advent of what is the Twitter spaces, and those are actually forums for assembly. That's where we're now exercising our rights to assemble. And so, in the event of an internet shutdown, then it means that we will not be able to assemble if that is our preferred choice of assembly. People are assembling on Zoom or MS Teams and all that. And you see, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly are key tenets of any functional democracy. And in the event that internet is shut down, then it's obvious that also that then this we are also defeating democracy by doing. Statistics have also shown that there's a growing number of citizens who receive their news online. Personally, I get most of my news on Twitter, and so and also people in the media, journalists, are also pushing out much of the information on. And so media freedoms are also curtailed when we have internet shutdowns. And so internet shutdowns and the lessons we can learn is that the scope needs to be expanded in terms of getting people to understand that they not only affect social media, they don't affect maybe one right or the other, they affect all our rights. You've mentioned the conversation about COVID-19. There's been documented cases in some countries where when internet is shut down, people who are accessing information online on COVID-19, especially in the spread and management of the pandemic, that information was denied. You can go through the basis of all rights, rights to education. If in the event of a shutdown, then it's obvious those who have accessing the education online, these people then suffer that they can't access education. And all these rights can actually be linked to the internet. And so anything that is on the internet and as much as we exercise our rights online, then gets to suffer in the event of a shutdown. So in terms of really what we can do, of course, as I started mentioning, is people getting VPNs. Ekaya has mentioned that VPNs are not cheap, and the experience in other countries that we've seen is if we want to post-beat or bypass the shutdown, is you actually need more than one VPN, because At times, some of the VPNs get shut down by the government, jump on to the next one, and the next one. There's also the aspect of communication platforms that offer you end-to-end encryption. Of course, at some point earlier in the year, we had a proposed mass migration from WhatsApp to Signal and maybe Wire, those who use that. And such platforms actually offer a level of security that can also defeat internet shutdowns, in the sense that where you have blockers on some of the messaging that I had not, given the scenario that happened in Tanzania. And so for us as Kenya heads into the general elections in 2022, and in the context that a third of all national elections that we've had in the recent past have been accompanied by shutdowns, it means that an internet shutdown is not a far-fetched idea in the country. As we have it, is that the two main political sides going into 2022 have actually just finished setting up the disinformation centers, and so disinformation will be rife. And you see, most governments have used disinformation as the reason for shutting down the internet. And so the realization that it is the major parties having set up these disinformation centers, and then coming back later to shut down the internet for people. That is definitely something that is going to come. In terms of what we can do, I think a lot has already been documented on what can be done in terms of fighting or advocating against internet shutdowns. I mean, the advocacy continues on keeping it on, but also for me, I believe the major change also comes in people understanding what really the internet means to them and what the access to it actually also means to them in the context of an election. If you look at the case scenarios, if you look at when the internet shutdowns were right in the 2010-2011 period when the Arab Spring was going on, internet shutdowns actually did not stop the protest. In fact, what happened is that the people who were actually then being brought to Tahrir Square were actually now being forced to have decentralized protests. And so the message would also be to government that in as much as you think an internet shutdown is a deterrent measure to disinformation, to clamping down on protests, it actually means that protests are further decentralized, and it really defeats the purpose of an internet shutdown in the first place. And so really for us as AI, we continue to advocate against internet shutdowns. Of course, the conversation here in Kenya, as we try to have it with some of the committees in Parliament, still looks like a fetched idea for them, and it's not really appreciated to the level that it is. But as you know, a shutdown comes as a very unilateral decision by a person. The person in power, most of the time, of course, it's interior, it's not communications, then it so happens. And so continuing advocacy for this is very important, and also just implementing cases of based on the case studies of other countries is important in helping people appreciate and understand, so that it is not a conversation of a few, that the internet matters to a few, and the rest of the population is left feeling that it's maybe just social media that has been shut down. Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot, Victor and Lynette, our panelists, for this very great discussion. I'm very sure we are picking, some positive lessons for our country and for ourselves as Kenyans. So just to mention that in conclusion, some of the lessons for the future that I draw from the three contexts that we are analyzing for this particular discussion, there is a need to train Kenyans on the use of VPNs. And I dare say that if we do a sample in this particular audience, maybe less than 5 people actually know VPNs. Personally, as a guy, despite being a digital rights officer, I have no idea. I can't confidently talk about VPNs because I don't understand them. So there is a need to train Kenyans on the use of VPNs. which allow you to access the internet as though you are in another country, let's say Canada or US or Australia or somewhere, yet you are in this country, Kenya, so you can't be tracked. That is the basic idea I have about VPN. So there is a need to train us on the use of VPNs because they are one of the most secure routes we can resort to in case of an internet shutdown in our country. The African Network Information Center has also, which is responsible for the IP addresses in Africa, has suggested that IP addresses and numbers be restricted for countries for at least 1 year for governments that impose shutdowns. So if you have a country that has an appetite for shutdowns like Ethiopia, so the African Network Information Center has suggested that they can be banned from accessing IP addresses and numbers for at least 1 year, to make them behave. There is also a need for us as citizens to publicly shame governments that have an appetite for internet shutdowns. So, being active citizens, going to the streets and shouting and using all the spaces we have online and offline to fight for our rights. There is also a need to raise awareness for the consequences of internet shutdowns and their violations on freedom of expression, which is a human right. And the question we should be asking ourselves is, are we always reactive? Part of what Victor has said is that, in the discussions he has had with members of parliament in the ICT committees in parliament, they say that this is a far-fetched idea for this country. We can't have an internet shutdown. Forget about it. That is a characteristic of a population that is always reactive. We always wait for things to happen, and then we try to assemble and do the firefighting at the last minute. So we should be, we should be active as citizens and have these discussions even before we witness an internet shutdown. In some African countries like Ethiopia and Eritrea, the government actually controls 100% of the internet service providers in the country. So I think that was before the entry of Safaricom and the other members of the, I think the joint venture or something, which entered the Ethiopian market. But the government had controlled 100% of the internet service providers. So if they decide to shut down the internet, like they did in the Tigray region, just a click on a button from the ICT ministry, everything is shut down because the government controls. Actually, in Ethiopia, the government runs the only state-owned provider, which gives them direct access to all ISP operations. And interestingly, there are at least 27 countries in Africa and across the world as of 2016, whereby there are laws in those countries which allow governments to shut down the internet if they feel that they want to protect national security or for other matters. So sometimes legal loopholes like those ones also allow the government, space to commit human rights violations in the name of protecting national security. So I want to thank you, Lynette Onyango from Thomson Reuters Foundation for your time and for discussions, for the very excellent views. Thanks a lot, Victor Ndere, as always, from Amnesty International, for all the good remarks we've made. So could we, clap shortly for our audience as they take their seats. So thanks a lot. Okay, so I think the conversation now moves on to you, the stakeholders, and you, the citizens. We've heard from Lynette about the importance of the internet, the Tanzanian context, the Ugandan context, all the, and I've painted us a picture of what happened in an internet shutdown. So they have painted to us a picture of what happens in an internet shutdown, and I'm sure we now have learned some things about VPNs, the lessons we've learned, the Ethiopian context, the Burundian, the Tanzanian, the Ugandan, and what we can do as Kenyans to avert a possible internet crisis in this country ahead of the elections. And even during the elections. So now to you, the audience, the floor is now open to you. You can pass this mic. So any member of the audience from Kiktanet, SIPIT, University of Nairobi, all those from Katiba Institute, all these participants. So you're free to now make your comments on the points of discussions that our panelists and myself have made during the introductory remarks and during the panel discussion. So I saw people writing and jotting down key points. So I believe you have something to say and to comment on, because it's a learning process for all of us, from stakeholders, from students, from policymakers, from lawmakers and all that. So the floor is open to you. So just raise your hand and then you will get the mic and we will proceed from there. Okay, I am a ladies first person, so I believe in that theory if it's a theory.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lois Mwakamba. I'm from Mzalendo Trust. So we are a parliamentary monitoring organization. One point that stood out for me from Lynette was, oh, okay. Yes, sorry. Okay, so when she was talking about the lessons we need to learn from neighboring countries, she mentioned that we all have a role to play. And I think I need to place emphasis on that bit, especially for the citizenry, because we sometimes, Zalendo, as we monitor Parliament and what goes on and the bills they are proposing, there's a provision of public participation, right? And so we try through our social media platforms to inform the public on bills that are open to public participation, etc. And if without the input of the public, these bills could go through, whether they're good or bad, right? I could give you an example of, there was a bill either late 2019 or early 2020, Kenya Information Communication Amendment Bill, that wanted to place restrictions on WhatsApp, make WhatsApp admins liable for things that would happen. And this is just a platform that we use for interpersonal communication. And people came out in huge numbers. At that time, in-person meetings were permitted. So when there was the public participation forum, stakeholders from Google, Katiba, Article 19, HIVOS, Mzalendo included, came, and through that concerted effort, that bill was shut down. So it's a call actually to each of us and to the public to keep pushing. When we see these bills, make sure you use all avenues possible. So even without having to go to the streets, if Parliament has made it possible for us to share, to submit our views, let us do so, because it counts for something. The noise that we make online counts for something. There was a bill, was it a coffee bill? No, the livestock bill, something that wanted to regulate beekeeping. And because of that noise that people made online, it was taken back. The leader of majority chose to withdraw it from debate. So it's a call to each one of us to keep pushing, keep advocating, keep lobbying, because our noise counts for something. So thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. By the names, I'm Layapan Paul. I'm a representative from the University of Nairobi. So I followed up the presenters, Mr. Khai Nabeno, then Lynette, and at some point to note down. One of the point has been raised by my colleague here about the bills. As Kenyans, we have to advocate about the bill that has to do about writing and advocating for laws that will protect us as citizens. A very clear law or act that has to protect us as citizens about if this internet shutdown may happen in our country, what right do we have as Kenyans in order to criticize the government directly, a law that clearly states about this internet shutdown has to be presented to the government or to the parliament in order to be passed, so that there might be an authority that will be safeguarding us from being violated our rights. Thank you.
Mine was just a question. I wanted to ask if it is illegal for one to bypass the internet restrictions imposed by the government.
Maybe I can answer that question. I'm sure Jeanette and Victor, both lawyers will help me. Of course, there are lawyers in the audience. So as far as I know, and as far as the legal, the current legal framework in Kenya is concerned, I believe it is not illegal. It is legal. It is within the legal, your legal rights as a citizen to bypass, an internet shutdown. And by the way, I've never heard of a scenario of somebody who was prosecuted because the government said, "Oh, we imposed an internet shutdown," and you went ahead to do zigzags and maneuvered our shutdown. So maybe the law, the current Computer, Misuse and Cybercrimes Act did not foresee such a scenario of persons bypassing the internet shutdown, or they never actually foresaw a scenario in which the government will impose an internet shutdown and what the rights of citizens are. So it's a fertile ground for not litigation, but for lawmaking and for legislation. So we as stakeholders, actually part of the discussions we should be moving, and I think the young man, Yapan, mentioned that, is we should have a discussion about what rights exist to us as citizens in the most unlikely event that the government of Kenya imposes an internet shutdown, because our rights do not get extinguished because of an internet shutdown. There has to be continuity of human rights. So I think that is, something which we may never have thought of as a country, but because of this, that is why we must have these discussions. Such critical issues arise, and we must respond to them, and we must take this conversation forward as a country. So I think under the law, as far as I know, all the computer, all the ICT regulations and all the laws, I don't think it is a criminal offense. And of course, I stand corrected. I don't think it's a criminal offense for somebody to bypass an internet shutdown via a VPN. That is why actually VPNs exist in the first place. And Kenya is a signatory to most of these African declarations, conventions, including the UN conventions, which give human beings and citizens and persons this particular right to internet. And that is why that question is actually connected to the idea that maybe the internet is a basic need. Because if the internet is switched off in this room for, let's say, the next 5 hours, we will begin complaining about, oh, I can't see an email which has been sent to my inbox. So that's a very good conversation and question. And maybe I will allow my friend from Katiba Institute to respond to that question on the legal aspect of bypassing internet shutdowns. Maybe just to make that contribution, if you don't mind.
Yes, good evening, everyone. So my name is Ray Odanga. I'm from Katiba Institute, and I'd like to look at the issue about digital rights vis-a-vis chaotic election through the lenses of freedom of expression under Article 33(1) of the Constitution of Kenya. And the issue about freedom of expression is something that is so dear to me, because we are in court. We are currently in court on various issues, especially regarding, if you look at Article 33(1), there are those elements that have been provided under freedom of expression, such as freedom to seek or impart ideas, freedom of artistic creativity, and freedom of academic freedom, and freedom of scientific research. So part of the cases that we have as with regards to freedom of expression. One of them is regards to the KFCB, the Films and Stages Act under Ezekiel Mutua. And also we are currently also in court under the issue about the unconstitutionality of the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act. So during that, we are still on with the Rafiki case. It's currently at the Court of Appeal. And one thing I've done about the case is doing a case study on the Rafiki case. And I was lucky to work with Shalom Ndigu from Reuters, Thomas Reuters, and Taiwan law firms all over the world when we are comparing the jurisdictions with regards to artistic creativity. Now, one thing I discovered about freedom of expression is that most of the East African countries, we have got the same elements when it comes to freedom of expression. Now, when it comes to enforce, now the problem comes with the judiciary, the independence of the judiciary when it comes to enforcing of such kind of laws. And Kenya now here, Kenya emerges top. Now, by virtue of Article 2.5 and Article 2.6, conventions and treaties that Kenya is part of makes them part of the laws of Kenya. Things like ICCPR, IDHR on freedom of expression fortify the elements of freedom of expression. So it's very easy if the government will try to circumvent the elements that have been given under Article 33 and the various conventions that Kenya is part of to be contested in court. We have got a very robust high court divisions, constitutional and human rights one, then we have got the judicial review ones. Yeah, so it's not going to be easy, as you see in other East African countries that we have. On another point also too, one of the acts to look on is the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act. This act will affect the bloggers, media houses, and even the human rights institutions. Now, on October 20th last year, the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act was among the statutes that were found to be unconstitutional because of the lack of input of the Senate. Now, the problem that came, despite being adjudged to be unconstitutional, the court did not issue a moratorium on them. If you've been careful, immediately after the act was declared unconstitutional, the office of the DPP tweeted that the act is still functional, and they've been prosecuting people under the act due to the lack of the moratorium. That's among the issues that we are currently in court with. So if you look at even after the act was adjudged to be unconstitutional, they went and preferred six charges against Sipra Nyakundi, the blogger. The media houses are very quiet about it. They're not talking about it, and it affects them. They only started talking about it after the act became operational and it was going to affect them. And even right now in the case, they are nowhere to be seen. So media houses need to wake up and realize that as we go to the election, such kind of laws are going to be used against them, and they have to make good use of the courts that are available to ensure that such kind of laws don't exist at all. So as we go to the elections in Kenya, which is going to be one of the chaotic probably in the country, we need to wake up and look at such kind of laws, protect the civic spaces that we have and the freedom of expression that we have under the progressive constitution of Kenya. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think one issue which Wakili has mentioned is that, of course, he's arguing from, with the lawyer bias, of course. Let's take advantage of our court system. And one thing I love about Kenyans, you misspell my name, tomorrow 9 a.m., I am in court. We love litigation. Let's make use of our court system. And that is why it's talking about, the court never issued a moratorium for that particular law, which was annulled by the court. And that was an affront to the Constitution, because the Constitution says, the law that was enacted by the National Assembly must have had the input of the Senate. So the reality ought to have been that those laws it is as though Parliament or National Assembly never debated those laws even in the first place. Null and void, but they gave them 9 months to correct the anomaly. That 9 months, I think, is elapsing. We are, of course, welcome to my country.
Oh, hi, everyone. Yes, mine is more of an addition of what my colleague has said. I think I was looking at it from a different perspective. Instead of an internet shutdown, what I foresee is a lot of arrests based on freedom of expression. And it's something we see every election. I think we started seeing it this year. This is just alluded with the arrest of Cyprian Nyakundi. Even remember when people went on a rant on IMF, some people were actually arrested under that same act, the Computer Misuse and Cybercrime. So I'm seeing a rise of that. And I think it's something that we should really be aware of. The other thing I'm seeing is, because I'm also a lawyer, there's a rise of laws being passed that don't make sense every time we need an election. In case example, like it's just alluded to the Cybercrime Act, there's actually an amendment to it. And Kiktanet, BAKE, Article 19 actually did a submission to that amendment. And one of the most problematic clauses is, I think, Section 2 that says, once a commission is formed, they can have the ability to render websites in Kenya useless. That is a very problematic clause. So I think it's now that we should really be aware of what kind of laws are being passed between now and next year. And we should really start calling them out. Like this one, when we did our submission, I was surprised when last week reading the paper and realized it's actually past the parliamentary committee stage. And I'm like, I didn't expect even this to go that far. But now you see it's already making serious inroads. And it's not something everyone should be actively monitoring, be like, where is this going? So those are some of the things that I think I foresee. So we may see really an internet shut, but a serious rise of freedom of expression being kind of curtailed in different ways.
First of all, thank you to Paradigm Initiative for hosting this great event. So my point emanates more from a data localization perspective. So more and more developing countries, including a large number of African countries, are adopting data localization perspectives, which basically means that the personal data of those citizens should not leave the geographical jurisdiction of that country. And this also places more power on the government to control access to and use of that data. And also incidentally, it will mean that foreign companies, being the social media sites that we actively use, will have to set up offices within that country. And I wanted to pose this more for a question to the panel and also as a comment, so feel free to chime in if you do have a point. But do you think that these data localization laws will place more control in the hands of governments by allowing them to coerce these internet service providers, these social media sites, therefore making the whole process of initializing and conducting an internet shutdown easier and more centralized and streamlined for these governments? Yeah, thank you.
Respond to that directly. So we don't get the question lost.
Yeah. So yeah, the question on the dangers of data localization, and I think you mentioned you work on data governance, which is a huge issue in data governance, but a lot of the concerns that come when you talk about data localization for especially the social media companies, because that's what most African governments are targeting, is that this data will, if you look at, I don't know which law it was, it keeps escaping my mind. There was a law that required that, actually it's the kicker bill that she mentioned when she spoke, the one that was shot down in the end of 2019. So you see, that law required, that law proposed that all social media companies would keep a local copy of their data here in Kenya. And so that then meant that that data center, the data center that they wanted, would be up for inspection by government if government wanted to. And so then that, of course, would present a lot of problems to the users, because, and you see, for this thing, you have to look at it as an ecosystem of what laws they wanted to put in. So one, you register all social media users, because that law eventually, essentially described everyone as a blogger so long as you use social media. So then everyone is registered on that platform. Then the second thing is have that data center localized here in Kenya for social media users in Kenya. And so you see, there's concern about surveillance. There's and that was actually the key concern, that this was a potential a veiled surveillance attempt that the government was trying through that Kika amendment. And so while of course citizens, and you know, the claim has been that we have our data is also linked to our sovereignty, and so there should be no problem with localizing this data. Ideally they shouldn't, but knowing the governments that we have and how they draft the laws to give themselves access to this to these data centers that they want localized, then it would of course defeat the purpose of what we want, of what we have actually proposed, or what we have in our data protection laws. And so in my view, definitely data localization in the current context as is definitely a worrying conversation. Yeah.
Okay, somebody had their hand up.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matet Lokito. I'm a student of international studies at the University of Nairobi. First of all, allow me to make a recommendation, is that it is very difficult to fight for your rights when you're not properly informed. And I will propose that if we want to create a youth body in Africa and even across the world society that knows its rights and even what it means even to fight for those rights, we really need to be properly informed. And one key area that I'm proposing to the youth is that let's all try our best to be properly informed on digital technology and information technology, because if there is a discipline where there is huge revolution, like if you look at the digital technology, in 24 hours, so many things have changed. So it is our duty to remain informed of what is going on. Then number two, there was a suggestion that Linda made, and I was very keen. She said that when the internet is shut down, all other spheres of life are affected. Of course, I decided to paraphrase that so that it fits. You all know that there are 7 spheres of life. You know, we have entertainment, we have family, government, economics, religion, education, and media. And when one sphere is affected, all other spheres are affected. Now, my question here is, because the presentation that the EKI made was a digital rights vis-a-vis chaotic elections in East Africa. Therefore, my question is, are these digital rights even protected in our constitutions across Africa? Then question number 2 is it really possible for a situation where there are no chaotic elections, not only in Eastern Africa, but in Africa? Is it really possible to have that situation where there are no chaos, the country is very stable? I love the way Scandinavian countries behave, but is it really possible in our context as Africa? That's my question. Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, so maybe to attempt to answer the question. So first of all, we will be living in utopia and out of reality if we say that we want to have the most perfect elections in the world. You can never achieve that. And I must say, you know, one of the most advanced democracies in the world, the United States of America, 2020. What happened with the United States? With, for the first time in the history of the US, that somebody was claiming that elections were not free and fair, they were rigged, stop the count. All of us are familiar with that. So what we want to recommend as Paradigm Initiative, as Amnesty, as Kiktanet, as Katiba, as all these other stakeholders is, can we try to have elections that don't have the internet as part of the whole election fiascos and, you know, the chaos. Let the chaos not involve the internet. Let people campaign, go to the ballot, Kenyans vote in a free and fair process, and the winner emerges, and, you know, it's sworn in and life continues. But now when you have an internet shutdown, you know, or the internet being shut down as a result of the election, that's where we come in as active citizens to say, no, that is now going overboard, because when you shut down the internet, then all the other things we spoke about, you know, come in. You're affecting the economic, you know, life of some people. You're affecting the healthcare of some people who rely on apps to, you know, get connected to their doctor or to check their roots and if they were infected by COVID-19 or something like that. So our problem is not really the chaos in elections and whether or not elections in Africa are free and fair. Our point is the incorporation of the internet as a key point of concern in elections in Africa and specifically in East Africa. And that's why we pointed out to the Tanzanian context, the Ugandan context, the Burundian context, the Ethiopian context, all of which are Eastern Africa, you know, contexts. So with the elections in Kenya coming up next year in August, we foresee, you know, with the benefit of foresight, even if we are not sons and daughters of Jewish prophets, we can tell with the exactitude of Prophet Nehemiah that there will be an internet shutdown in this country somehow, because it has happened across the region. And with the most chaotic election, I can, you know, promise you coming up, what can we do as active citizens to avert that particular crisis? We don't want to say we want perfect elections, but we are saying with the internization, with the internet being used as a tool of, and I loved one thing which Victor said. He said that, you know, the current political formations in this country have just completed setting up their disinformation centers. You know, the Dennis Itumbis of this world, the Robert Alais. Like I was looking at Dennis Itumbi's timeline, you know, today in the morning. Oh, I always wonder where that guy gets information. The guy is saying, oh, I don't know what primary school in Kiamba school, there is a Jubilee candidate putting on an IBC reflector, not the Jubilee one. There is no security officer in some. You wonder why this guy. These are people who are trying to spread misinformation, disinformation, and any other information that is not information. So I think that is, maybe I can allow Lynette. So we should be winding up in 18 minutes.
Yes, once again, thank you for the opportunity. I just wanted to add one more thing about proportionality to address the question that was raised. The government, the state, we as citizens know the concerns around elections, around the use of the internet. And I'd love to draw an example from the US elections on how, for example, Twitter had an information button under former President Donald Trump's tweets whenever he spoke of something that was not factual. If the government is concerned about the spread of fake news, quote unquote, you can place it's about allocation of responsibilities. As citizens, we have responsibilities. Social media companies have responsibilities. ISPs, Safaricom, Jamii Telecom, etc. Everybody has a role to play in this. So if we place responsibility on social media companies, for example, if somebody, Lynette, for argument's sake, says that in polling station X, there are no polling clerks. We've gone there and there's nobody, and it's not true. There should be a tagline. This has not been confirmed, or officials, whatever Twitter did, instead of, once again, the doctrine of proportionality. If you're going to the extreme measure and saying nobody will have access to the internet, whereas the risk is Lynette spreading fake news on social media, it's about, if you're addressing that small concern, your response should also be equally small, not going to one extreme measure just to address, such a small issue.
Okay, thanks, thanks, Lynette, for that response. The doctrine of proportionality. And somebody talked about responding to a mosquito bite using a hammer. Professor Lumumba. Okay. Any other? Yes, Linda. Sorry. Okay. Maybe Wakili, and then you pass over to Linda.
Just to add on a point, I think then we should start having discussions as everyone, not only the civil society side. Something I've come to learn, wherever you go, particularly with government, it's usually just a civil society narrative. They tend not to listen sometimes because they're like, this is just a civil society. They're always criticizing what you're saying. So why not start having this conversation with everyone? If you're talking about social media companies, because that's what appears to be the bone of contention, start talking to the Facebooks, already asking them, okay, so what are you doing to prepare for the Kenyan elections? And I give an example of what happened, I think, in Nigeria. I was reading an article, I don't know what it was. Before Nigeria shut down Twitter, they actually called Twitter and Facebook. Facebook responded, Twitter didn't. And you see what happened next. So I think it's high time we start having these conversations, get the Safaricoms, get everyone to the table. Because if you just have a civil society narrative, in most cases, it's just one side of the story. It never really goes through. It's time we start having each side of the story. It's good to hear from now on, what are the measures Facebook is taking to ensure the elections in Kenya would be okay? What is Safaricom doing to ensure, for example, we won't start seeing throttling? Because if we just have one side of the story, I don't think we'll kind of achieve what we want.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Just to comment on the digital rights. Okay, first of all, when someone created these phones, I believe it's Steve Jobs or someone else, they celebrated over dinner or maybe beer, someone said that, but the governments actually went a date for it. So these phones, the internet, it is all a license to spyware, and we both know that. In a way or another, either today, tomorrow, even our presence here, it is monitored by the government because they have access to it. Then does that call new enactment of laws over the creation of digital softwares, whereby the government doesn't have access to personal information unless with subpoena, because we are citizens of our countries, but we are not criminals of our countries. So having freedom of expression, why does it need a legal or supervision? I still have that in mind. Like, we're given a freedom, but in a way it is civilized. Like, does that make sense? Or maybe it's not a freedom yet. But then, speaking of which, Kenya is still recovering from COVID, or maybe they are not even thinking of recovering, which brings to mind time is money and 1 second is 1 shilling. So shutting down internet in companies like Safaricom, Telecom, the internet service providing companies, that is like shutting in 24 hours, that is 86,400 seconds. So imagine hiyo ni kwa mtu mmoja, then the entire country now. Like, these are companies losing money. The companies we expect to pay taxes so as to boost our economy. So if the government is somewhere listening, we need to have freedom of expression. Maybe we need to put free again before freedom so that it can be clearly understood to the government and also to the citizens. We don't get tired of calling out our freedom, and we will never stop to call out our freedom. But my question is, how is digital being protected? How is being digital making me protected or making me safe? How can I know I'm safe in the digital environment? And who is to do that? Who is to protect me in the digital world? Maybe someone can answer.
Okay, does anyone want to respond to that in the audience? We don't, yes, okay.
Good afternoon. I'm very tall. Okay, so I think about the question Linda has asked, right? So it's all our responsibilities. Yes, at a personal level, I can say I'm a journalist, but it all calls for all our attention. Like Nani Ekai said that we are all bloggers. That means if anything comes up, it's upon us to take that action and communicate it out. Then, so I think it's our freedom, but we Kenyans, we tend not to dig deep to understand it better. So for it is upon us to talk about it. If at all you can post it maybe on any social media, you ask that question, you'll see the reaction people got. That means Kenyans are very reactive. They're very reactive people. So when you point that out, you'll get their response. But the matter is, we are not being taken serious by, let's say, our representatives or maybe our journalists who are in control of big media companies. We all know that anything you air out is being restricted. There are restrictions based on ownership, there are restrictions based on commercials. So if you are not that big in power or not big individual, you are free to say anything. But as your status continues to grow, you are limited because someone is somewhere watching you, and whatever you say will be maybe used some other day to pin you. So we just have to tend to fight hard for us to be free and to access the freedom of information. Yeah.
Okay, I think, let's also not forget that as a country, we also need to regulate our digital spaces, because there are people who, wake up in the morning, take shower, buy bundles, and get online to commit, things bordering on criminality. And that is why there is actually a computer misuse and cybercrimes bill by Honorable Aden Duale in Parliament, which seeks to, to place a lot of penal sanctions on people who abuse the internet, misuse the computers to spread pornography or child abuse or even terrorism. And of course, this is even real now that we are speaking about Kenya. So much as we want to enjoy digital rights, we also want the policymakers to, enact laws that ensure that we have, much as we have our responsibilities as citizens, we also must have our rights. And actually, as Paradigm Initiative, we are currently leading discussions in Tanzania in regards to a Tanzania Digital Rights and Freedoms Bill. Because if you look at all the computer laws, in Africa or in Kenya or in East Africa, they are very punitive, even by their name, computer misuse and cyber crimes. I don't know what. They appear punitive in nature. So there has to be a law that guarantees the rights of citizens. You must have internet rights, internet freedoms, and that has to be documented and safeguarded in a legal framework, both policy, institutional, and also the legal framework in the country. So there is a question on Twitter, from Twitter, which says, what can active citizens of Kenya and stakeholders do towards enhancing digital rights as we gear towards general elections? And I think, the panel kind of touched on this question during our discussions. And the point we are making is this, that as we gear towards the general elections in Kenya in 2022 August, first of all, there is a need to enlighten Kenyans on their digital rights. Because in this country, it's as though it's a privilege of government to either allow us to use the internet or choose not to allow us. So they can switch off and on at will, which is a fallacy that needs to be demystified. So the reality is you have access to information under the laws of this country, under the grand norm, the biggest law in the Constitution, access to information. And because human rights apply to citizens when they are offline and when they are online, that Article 33, okay, Article 35, Article 38 on political rights, you have all these rights, even online, as citizens. So the fact that Safaricom stores your information online doesn't give them an iota of opportunity for them to abuse that information in the name of, oh, this information is just online, we can play with it. No, these obligations and these rights extend beyond the physical space. So we can interpret the law to mean that you have access to information, including information available online. So you can't be barred from enjoying that particular right just because it is on a digital space. It extends across board. So what we can do as citizens is to shout, in our purest tones on rooftops, and try to remind the government that we know internet shutdowns have happened in East Africa. We want to warn you, the government, that we as citizens are watching, and we want to enjoy our internet in peace, even during the electioneering period. And during the BBI submissions, there is one of the people who, who made my day. And I slept a very happy Ekai, not the Ekai that woke up that day. The old man from Rongo who was saying, I was just being my farming in Rongo. And then I saw the constitution being mutilated. I decided to say, as an active citizen, I will come all the way from Rongo, come to Nairobi, and file a case against the BBI, constitutional amendment in the High Court and now in the Court of Appeal. This is a farmer, but he has decided to down his tools, his farming tools, and come and defend the Constitution. That is a duty on the shoulders of all of us as citizens. That is actually the price you pay for carrying that Kenya national ID card. That is the price you pay for the passport you carry around. You must challenge the authorities. You must try to change the status quo. That is what we ought to do. We must do as Kenyans as we get towards the general elections in August, on the 9th of August, 2022, next year. We must do that. We must rise as Kenyans, even if it means taking advantage of the courts. There are organizations in Kenya, Article 19, Paradigm Initiative, Katiba, SIP, many others, who can help you through public interest litigation. You don't even need to get any money. You only need to claim that a basic human right has been violated by government in regards to my digital rights, and I want to go to court. Amnesty International will be, I'm not purporting to speak on their behalf, but Victor can confirm that Amnesty International Kenya will be more than ready to help you 101%. Kenya Human Rights Commission, Thomson Reuters Foundation, Paradigm Initiative, and many others. And we actually, saw this during the case, which, was directed by government towards one of our own activist Mutemi Wakiyama. He was actually to attend this forum, but he had a last-minute confirmation of another meeting. So we must challenge government, even if it means publicizing images saying that the guy who appears in this photo is not authorized to transact business on behalf of the government of Kenya, or at least the people of Kenya. So be it. This is our country, and as Linda said, we are not criminals. We must enjoy our rights because there are people who paid for this enjoyment of rights, for these rights and this constitution, actually using their blood and their lives. They died so that we enjoy and have a great country. So going towards the elections of 2022, as a country, as citizens, as stakeholders, we have a duty to be vigilant. We have a duty, a solemn duty to remind the government that we are aware of all the mischiefs and misdeeds that they're planning to do, inspired by what happened across the region. And we are ready to defend it even in court as Kenyans. And I love the fact that Kenyans love litigation and they always go to court on the most ridiculous of reasons. And I want us to be many Okia Omtatas. And this forum cannot end without Mwalimu saying something to the students. Okay, Mwalimu, just say something, general comment, what you may have heard coming.
Good evening once again. I'm sorry, I had to go and engage my students some questions I gave them, so I'm here. So after attending main fora on internet governance and the rights of people, they said to use the internet, I agree with what most of us have said here, that if we keep quiet, then we solve nothing. But you do something, however it is, we are solving something. So there's a quotation: if we are not ready to govern or to read others, you have to be ready to be read by ignorant people. And that's true from what we've been discussing here, that a person does not understand the rights of others, does not want a good society, or does not want others to enjoy the rights which they're entitled to. And if, let's say, we go down to what you're talking here, is that we've elected people who don't notice these rights, that idea that I have to control people. So if you and me don't come up, don't shout, I don't come up with a meeting like this, then we are actually participating in the same, which this person is doing. You can imagine a person who wants to shut down the internet, or a person who wants to arrest people because he has power. And that goes down to the basic organization society, the rights we have, the resources we have that we have to share, all of us. So any chance to voice what's wrong in society has to be supported. But then on the other hand, not to do wrong things. Let's say you've seen some people, maybe an activist, but then guiding me the wrong direction. So let's all of us have this in mind. Anything that we are passing to people has to be something right, people to read, or any follow that we come up with, we are voicing this same concern. But then the basic has to come to each individual person. What is the idea of a good society that we have, governance, or the resources we see around? And therefore, you and me are informed. The mothers, our fathers in the village may not reason to the level we reason because we're exposed. So when we keep quiet, we're abetting the wrong to continue in society. So thank you for organizing this forum, and I encourage to organize many others. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mwalimu. I think one thing I've heard from him is keeping quiet is not and ought not to be an option. That is the summary of what I've taken from him. There are people who haven't spoken here, maybe Jackie, Sandra. Okay, yeah, maybe just like maybe closing remarks, maybe as we wind up the conversation.
So much has already been said, and I would be repeating, but I think what we need to do is how to solve this problem needs a multi-sectoral approach. Apart from the government respecting our rights, the Bill of Rights that's in the Constitution, the private sector has a role to play. That is the telecom companies in this case, because they have in an internet shutdown in Kenya. Internet is not solely controlled by the government. So we have Safaricom, Airtel, Telcom. So they also need to respect the right of freedom of expression. So they also have a role to play to be firm and maybe refuse to take part in that. And then also now we have civil society. Civil society can play a role in awareness creation. Awareness creation has been mentioned a lot. That's on digital literacy, because there's a lot of awareness in that sector, like issues like VPNs, yes, and then also litigation, which was already mentioned, to challenge laws such as the Cybercrime, Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act, which is already being challenged, but any other law that challenges the freedom of expression, particularly on platforms, on digital platforms. That is all.
Okay, last comments as we wind up. Last comments, anybody? You've been nominated by an active citizen to be active. Just lastly, as we wind up.
Fine. So I'd also like to stress what the other people have said with regards to eliminating internet shutdowns. So I think empowering citizens in terms of enlightening them on the rights they have on the internet is very important in this fight. So as things are right now, most people do not know the rights they have pertaining to the internet. So I think that's the first step that we should start with. That is all I have. Thank you.
Okay, so yes, somebody. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Paradigm, for the session. I would just like, when you're leaving this place, let it not be just notes we've taken and things we've heard. Let it be upon us to also create awareness to our friends, to our families, to the little spaces or not so little spaces we occupy. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, inspired by the gospel that nobody lights a lamp and hides it under a table, they go out to the world and let it shine. So I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for creating time out of your very, 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 very busy schedules to come and attend this forum. I understand it is a bit of a decision you made, to leave your workstation and come and attend this forum. But you also must be reminded that this is a forum that is for the benefit of our country, for the benefit of us as citizens, and for the benefit of everybody. So it's also advisable that much as we work in our organizations, Paradigm and many others, we also create time to inform society, to change policy discussions and to contribute our ideas. Because as somebody said, that the tragedy of not participating in politics is that you end up being governed by foolish people. Because you say politics is bad. Oh, I don't want to air my views because, okay, why should I? I will be arrested. Okay, you'll be arrested, taken to court, no evidence, case dismissed. Why do you fear to be arrested? I will be happy to be arrested in the name of my country. I am fighting for my country. So I want to thank all of you for coming and for all the good insights. And as Paradigm Initiative, we our intention is to partner with friends like Amnesty and Thomson Reuters Foundation and Kictanet and Hivos and many others who are here and who are not here to organize such forums. Especially, as we head up to the 2022 elections. And part of the discussions that we are having here, we are also having them in Tanzania, especially with a law that we are pushing in Tanzania called the 2021 Digital Rights and Freedoms Bill, which will be presented in the Tanzanian parliament very soon and assented. We are even lucky that we now have a new political administration because the previous one was not pro-human rights. We don't celebrate, untimely demises of our fellow humans, but as human rights organizations, sometimes you are happy when there is a system that listens, because we as human rights, it is sometimes hard to push conversations when, for instance, you have members of the ICT committee, in Parliament in Nairobi saying, "Oh, internet shutdowns, forget about it. You will never see them." Those are, it's like discussing nanotechnology with a village person. It makes no sense. But these are real things, as these discussions have indicated. So thank you so much. As you go back home, as you go back to your offices, spread the message. Don't hide the lamp under the table. Go out and spread the message that digital rights are human rights. I have learned today from a forum organized by Paradigm Initiative and partners. And we will have these forums as many of them as possible. In fact, we are having a discussion in Somalia. We have a convening of stakeholders in Somalia to discuss the state of digital rights in Somalia. It was supposed to be a physical event, but it's going to be a virtual event because of the fluid political and security situation in that Horn of Africa country. So these discussions are happening across Africa, not just in Kenya. So let's look at it from that perspective, because sometimes we say, it's a Kenyan thing, it's a Ethiopian thing, this is a human rights thing. It cuts across board. So thank you so much. Nawashukuru sana na Mungu awabariki. Tuonane inshallah kwenye kongamano lingine hivi karibuni. Asanteni sana. All the best and thanks. Okay, maybe now. Okay. So all of us understand the challenges.